Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know.
My Bigfoot sighting took place in a wilderness region of Washington State, near the coast, very near the Oregon-Washington border, which is the Columbia River. My story on how I got involved with all this, it's kind of important to mention where it all began with me. I was getting ready to go out of town, go to Mexico with my family. And I was taking my dog for a walk at 11 o'clock at night in a neighborhood, a housing development type neighborhood near Vancouver, Washington. And I was up on a road that I walk all the time. I do late night walks on this road a lot. And it's kind of like a housing development with little pockets of wilderness, like canyons here and there, but it's not really wilderness at all. It's houses and highways in every direction, but it has this kind of artificial feel of wilderness. And I found a deer laying in the grass on the side of the road, and this deer had been completely mutilated. It had had its front legs ripped clean off, legs were gone. Its innards had all been ripped out, removed. I mean, every organ, intestines, everything gone. No cut marks, no nothing. The whole deer, it kind of looked like it'd been hit by a semi-truck and just battered, and then stripped of all of its organs. But the only thing that remained was the bile sac, the stomach sac, which was amazingly unharmed. And I mean, anybody that's familiar with hunting or whatever, it's really important not to rupture the bile sac. You don't want to get that on your meat. That's just acidic sludge, and just the state of what this deer was in, it just made no sense that whatever did this to this deer was methodical and careful enough to not rupture the stomach sac. I don't have cougars and bears in my neighborhood. This thing was beyond, I mean, it just blew my mind to find this in my neighborhood, to think that there's a predator in my neighborhood that can do this to a deer. It spun me for a loop because it didn't make any sense. And all I could do was take some pictures of it and go back to the house. I told my wife and, what I found. And we were leaving to get on an airplane and go to Mexico. Like an hour after I saw this deer, I was on a plane. Well, I was at the airport. And so I didn't report it. I couldn't call like Fish and Game. I couldn't do anything. And so, like I said, I took some pictures, and the next day I was in Mexico. And when I returned a week later, I went up immediately to check on the deer, and the deer was gone. And it was just something very strange and eerie to find in my neighborhood. And it made me start watching a bunch of stuff on YouTube about Sasquatch and Dogman and all these things. And at this period in my life, I wasn't really a Sasquatch believer. I wasn't a full-blown denier of them. I just said too much common sense. Like, it can't be real. It has to be misidentifications and hoaxes. And, that was just kind of my mindset. But finding that deer, it really made me want to try to understand what could have possibly done this to this deer. And so I'm watching a lot of stuff on Bigfoot. Just kind of had Bigfoot on the brain a lot. And I had a trip planned up into the mountains, up into this coastal mountain range where I go up and I mine for agates and crystals and stuff like that. I'm just kind of an amateur miner, rock hound. I have a crazy rock collection, and this is a great place to go up there and find them. And I was up there with my father and my son, and they got tired of watching me break rocks and do what I do, so they left. So I was alone, and I was drilling rocks and doing what I do, trying to get these agates out of this boulder. And I was thinking about Sasquatch because I've been watching all the videos, and I had that weird thing with the deer. And so I stopped what I was doing to make like a conscious decision to climb up to this viewpoint, to look out upon the lower valley and see if I could spot a Bigfoot. Now, I never in a million years actually thought I would see a Bigfoot. I was just, tired of working on this rock, and I, had been thinking about Bigfoot. And so I climb up there, and I get up to the top of this viewpoint, and it's up this really dirty, crumbly cliffside, and then you get to this viewpoint and you look out upon this valley. It's a pretty good view. You're up pretty high and you're looking way down into this valley below, and there's a river that runs through the valley, and there's forest and stuff in the valley. And so as I'm climbing up to this viewpoint, I'm stopping and picking up rocks and putting them in my pocket. And these are all rocks to be inspected at a later time. And so I was kind of rock hounding at the same time, but going up to this viewpoint to see if I could spot a Sasquatch. And so I get up to the viewpoint, and I'm not even scanning the valley for maybe a minute, not at all. And I look down, and I'm laughing in my head, going, oh, that's funny. That looks like a Sasquatch right there. And, I thought it was a stump, or I thought it was a shadow or something down in the valley. And I'm staring at it, and then all of a sudden I realize, like, it's walking, and I'm a ways away from this thing. I'm up really high, and I'm looking down. I don't know the distance, maybe a half a mile or a quarter mile. It's a pretty good distance away, and I'm just kind of like jaw dropped wide open because I'm actually staring at a Sasquatch, and I'm actually seeing its long legs, 2 legs, long arms, is all its body is one color. It's like a dark, almost black seeming color, but I would assume probably a dark brown, but a dark color. And I see this thing, and it's walking through the valley where there's a bunch of replanted trees. This is all a logging wilderness that I'm in. And the trees are small. They're small, like Christmas tree sized trees. And I see this thing actually lift up its arm and bounce its hand across the top of the little trees. It's walking through, and it was just so bizarre. That's something I do when I walk through like tall weeds and stuff. I'll just put my hand out and just kind of bounce my hand across the top of them. And I am just staring at this thing and just like almost like questioning my sanity type state. Like how am I looking at something that meets all of the criteria to be a Sasquatch? I don't, how does somebody say, I'm going to go up here to look and see if I can spot a Sasquatch, and just like that, they're staring at one. So I was kind of beside myself watching this thing walk through the clear cut. And then I start kind of coming to reality and like, okay, focus. Like, this is real. You're staring at, something that's not supposed to exist. Where's your phone? I'm patting my pockets. I have rocks in every pocket. Don't have my phone. I look down. I see my truck down there. I know my phone's in my truck because it's a ways away. The truck was parked over where I was running power tools off a Honda generator where I was working on getting rocks. And so I'm debating, what do I do? What do I do? Do I go get my phone, or do I just stare at this thing? And I'm like, if I leave and come back, it's going to be gone. And I'm like, God, what do I do? What do I do? And then I just said, you know what? No one's going to believe me. No matter what, nobody's going to believe a word of this if I don't try to at least record it. And so I jump, run, tumble down this cliffside, run, hit the gravel road, run as fast as I can to my truck, hit my truck in record time, grab the phone. Then I take a few steps and I realize I have all these rocks so I pull all the rocks out of all my pockets and then just run as hard as I can, climb up this cliff as fast as I can, and I get back up to the viewpoint. And I'm just huffing and puffing, and I pull out my camera, and I'm looking, I can't find it. It's gone, and I'm just like panicked, freaked out, and then all of a sudden I spot it, and I turn on the phone and I zoom in on it, and I have a video on a YouTube channel of this video. And you can hear me just how heavily I'm breathing, just completely out of breath, just, and I zoom in on this thing, and I have an 18-minute video of this moment, and it's far away, and my phone doesn't zoom in very well, but you can clearly see in the video, that there's a dark object there, but strangely, as I'm filming this thing, it doesn't move anymore. Like, it was so bizarre. It was like it knew I was filming it or something and just wouldn't walk anymore. It just stayed hunkered the whole time, hunkered down in the same spot. But you can see some movement in the video that, with the naked eye. I have really good eyesight, and I could see the arm reach up occasionally, and I could see way better visuals than what my phone created at that distance. But nonetheless, it's on there. The video's there. And the big problem with the video was that I'm up really high, and these clouds would come in and out of the shot and make it real blurry and grainy. But then the clouds would lift and I'd have a clear shot. And so I would turn off the phone and wait for the clouds to go. Then I'd start recording, and and I spent about an hour on that viewpoint looking at this thing. And once I edited all the footage, and it ends up being about 18 minutes of footage. But eventually the clouds got super thick, and I was getting phone calls from my wife and my parents saying, because I was staying at my parents' house, and I had, an hour drive from where I was at to get back to their house. And so I was being hounded, come back for dinner, and I didn't tell them I'm looking at a Sasquatch right now because I just didn't want to sound like I was crazy. And so eventually I had to just go. The clouds got real thick, and so I didn't get to see the Sasquatch walk away from the perspective that I saw it in. And so I went back and I told them. Eventually, I didn't tell them right away. I just kind of kept it to myself. But then my wife was like, "Why are you being weird?" And then I told her, what I saw, and I showed them the footage, and they're all like, "Oh, are you sure that's not a bear?" And I know I've seen so many bears in the wild, and I know it wasn't a bear. I know it was walking upright on 2 feet, with long arms, and I couldn't believe that I had become one of those people with blurry, unclear footage claiming they saw a Sasquatch, because I had been, for so many years, I rolled my eyes at that stuff, and just one of those people that said, "Oh, if it was real, somebody would have clear footage." And so this really motivated me to pursue this thing and prove and back up that my footage is of a Sasquatch. And so I started getting together gear and planning trips, and I started going out. And on my first 3-night mission into this wilderness, I was by myself. I'm always by myself up there. But I started exploring these canyons, because there's a lot of canyon systems out there, and the canyons are kind of protected from the logging industry because of the fish runs. So the canyons would be and are great places for something like a Sasquatch, because they still have old growth trees in there. They have salmon and steelhead runs that come through there, and the logging doesn't take place in there. So I started pursuing these canyons, and they're they're not easy to get into, and you have to climb down these really steep walls. And my first like big mission into this canyon, I find a footprint. I find an awesome footprint, and I have a video of this footprint on my channel as well. And that really got me excited. Okay, here's a footprint. Like, I mean, it looks like a big human footprint in the deep in the most hard to get to place where there's no way a person's running around barefoot. And so that got me amped to, keep going, because here's a piece of evidence to support my claim. And so that was, I think, into my second night on my first mission. And then it was the last day that I was out hiking around. I went to this kind of other section of the canyon that is connected to the valley where I actually saw the Sasquatch. And in order to get there, I have to drive way around and park at this gate in the middle of nowhere and ride an e-bike for like 7 or 8 miles up different gravel roads, and then leave the e-bike and then cross a river and hike up a river. And so this is where I was at, and I'm walking. I have a helmet camera on, I have a body camera, and I have a camera in my hand. I have all this gear, and I'm tromping up this river in the middle of nowhere. I'm pretty nervous out there all alone. And I look to my left and I see a big, huge upside down tree stuck in the dirt. And I just immediately knew what I was looking at. I'd seen programs about upside down trees, and I never dreamed I'd find one. I mean, I was hoping for anything pertaining to Sasquatch, but the upside down trees, I figured, oh, that's something they find in Alaska. And so when I found that upside down tree, I was just elated. And I had to climb up this little cliff to get to it. And I get up into this little valley, and there's upside down trees all over in there. And initially, that first day, I only found 5 or 6 or 7 of them, and some of them aren't even upside down trees. Some of them are just logs that have been like stabbed into the ground. They are upside down though, because it's the fattest end of any log is the part that connects to the stump, the closest to the ground. And the fattest end is always up in the air. And so I've measured them and inspected them, and I've made videos about them, and they're all upside down, but just some of them don't have root structures on them. So this was a big deal. This was a huge discovery for me in the world of Sasquatch. I found a footprint, and then I found these upside down trees. So I take these videos back and show them to people, and you get mixed reviews from people. Some people are in awe, amazed, like, oh, wow, you really are onto them. And then other people, want to come up with every excuse to why there's upside down trees stabbed into the earth. But this really got me into the researching aspect. Like, it really showed me, okay, I'm in an area that has these creatures, these beings. And so I planned more and more trips. And then it was, I don't know, a month or a few weeks later, I was up there and I was exploring a different canyon. I had my dog with me this time. I don't bring my dog with me a lot because she only has 3 legs. So I'm always worried about her hurting one of her legs, because then I have to carry her out. And I'm down in the bottom of this canyon, and I'm finding these insane agates bigger than my head, agates bigger than basketballs. And I've just never seen anything like it. And so it was just kind of ironic, that I started out looking for agates and rocks, and I find a Sasquatch, and then I'm no longer looking for agates, I'm looking for Sasquatch. But the more I look for Sasquatch, the more I'm finding these just amazing deposits of agates that I never even would have ever dreamed existed. But the problem is you got to hike them out of these canyons. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm climbing out of this canyon. I have my dog with me. And from the bottom of that canyon where I was just at, something just built out the most just earth rattling, just this sound that I can't really compare it to anything, but someone, a different researcher once talked about a sound that a Sasquatch made, and he compared it to like a diesel engine not wanting to fire, and that's what I heard. I know that what he was describing was the sound. It was this just crazy, like, that just, I mean, but that sound, but just 10,000 times louder with this menacing just roar, and it just blasted up the canyon at me. And I mean, it really, it startled me, and it made my dog just hunker down into a little ball of fear. Like, my dog, she's a protector, she's a watchdog, and when she heard that sound, she looked at me with just pure fear in her eyes. And I don't know if that was a warning, I don't know what it was, but that was the first time I'd had a vocalization experience. And I've been back to that place and back to that canyon since, a few times. But so after that was a camping trip that I can't remember exactly, because there's been a lot of trips out there. But at some point while I'm out doing these investigations, I came across several pretty awesome X structures. And the X structures were some of the first, Sasquatch artwork type things that I found. But in fact, now that I think about it, I did find an X structure prior to the upside down trees, but it was kind of a debatable X structure. But so after the vocalization experience, I was kind of going deep into a section of the woods on a different trip, and I found these trees that it's hard to explain. They're arches. They're trees, big Doug fir trees that have been bent into these impossible arches. And they're usually wedged up against another tree, and when there's all these scars in the neighboring tree from where something has bent this tree and manipulated it in a way where it's wedged and pressed against the neighboring tree to help hold the tree in this weird form. It's something that there's no way Mother Nature did this. And it's something that wind and snow and none of those things could do this to a tree. And so I've found quite a few of these trees, and so I'm always looking in the woods for them. And then, so at some point, a friend of mine who's a geologist, I had talked to him about everything that's going on, and I had talked to him about the rocks and everything, and he wanted to come out there and see some of these deposits of agates with me. So I agreed, okay, let's do a trip out there, and we're driving, and we're into the trees, and we're into the area that I consider my main research area. And there's a section in that area that I refer to as Tree Break Alley, because there's tree breaks all over the place that are just super bizarre tree breaks. And that's where some of those bends that I described are at. And we're driving through Tree Break Alley, and we're heading towards an area where we were going to hike down to the bottom of a canyon, and I see a brand new tree bend, a brand new arch in the woods. And so I tell him, we have to go look at this. And so we park, and I go down there, and I'm making a video and talking about this bent tree, this arch thing. And he comes down there, and he's looking at this thing perplexed, and he discovers a pine cone on the ground. And he picks it up, and he wants me to acknowledge it's a pine cone. And I'm like looking at him kind of like, why are you talking about a pine cone? When I'm looking at this, and he explains to me, no, you got to understand, this is not from this forest. This is a certain species of trees. It does not grow here, and it is directly beneath this thing that you're in awe of. This had to have been brought here. And so I'm looking at the pine cone, and it was a big, weird pine cone, something that wasn't similar to any pine cones I've seen in that area. And we researched it, and the pine cone is a subalpine tree. The nearest one is from hundreds of miles away. And that species of tree has all these kind of remedial medicines that the Native Americans used to use. I don't know if or how or why or what the pine cone was left there, but it was left there underneath this arch. It was brought there. And so that is extremely significant to me, because on another trip, I had brought my son on this camping trip. He's 9, and a good buddy of mine was up there camping with us too. And my son and I were out exploring the woods, and I was actually filming when this happened. And we were looking at a new arch, a different arch that I found. And as I'm filming the arch, my son, he's like, "Hey, Dad, what's this?" And I turn around, and sure enough, there's another one of those pine cones. And it is intentionally stuck in the dirt. It wasn't just laying on its side. Like, it was intentionally pushed into the mud underneath the arch, just like the other one. And I got all that on video, because the first one, I didn't actually video when the geologist Brent pulled it off the ground. He just picked it up and showed it to me. So this was really cool to actually see it in the mud, sitting there like perfectly stabbed into the dirt, this big, huge pine cone. And I collected both these pine cones. They're both actually in baggies and frozen right now. I fully believe that there's potential DNA on them. I don't have the resources to pursue that. But on this same camping trip, my son and I were sharing a tent, and my buddy was sleeping in his vehicle, his Subaru thing. And I had set up some weird lights and stuff around in the woods, like this kind of like flashing lights, like sort of like a little rave type thing in the woods. It's something I did just kind of to just potentially pique the interest of a Sasquatch, put something out there that they've never seen before. And so I'm sleeping in there, and the lights are going, and they're running off a battery that I set up. And I had set an alarm for 4 a.m. because I was going to get up at 4 a.m. and go out and just play with my night vision camera and look around in the dark. And so my alarm wakes me up, and it's vibrating. My phone's vibrating under my pillow. And it wakes me up, and so I'm sitting there, and I'm debating whether I want to go walk around or just go back to sleep. And I realize there's a giant shadow right on top of my tent, because of the flashing lights in the trees. They were creating a shadow, and I realized this shadow is moving, and it's right above me, and it was kind of swaying back and forth, and it was huge. And so I grab my camera, and I turn on my camera, and my camera makes this, beep, beep, beep sound when it activates. And as soon as that sound went off, this giant shadow across my tent just goes whoosh and flashes, and it's gone. So I was like pretty nervous, like what was that, and I didn't know really what to do. I wanted to go out and look around with the night vision, but my son and my dog are in the tent, and I'm just kind of sitting there debating, not sure what to do. And I ended up falling back asleep. And then I wake up 7 a.m.-ish, and I'm getting up, and I'm making coffee, and my buddy gets out of his car, and he's like, "Hey, man, what were you doing last night? Why were you looking in my windows? Why were you all over my car?" And I'm like, I wasn't. I didn't come out of the tent last night. That was kind of sort of reaffirmed for me what I saw on the tent, which was just maybe 2 feet, 3 feet from me. The only thing between us was just some nylon tent material. And I wasn't even going to make a big deal about that or even talk about it, because all I really saw was a shadow. But when he was talking about, he thought it was me looking in his windows and all around his car. And he thought I was out playing with my night vision. And that's why somebody was in the dark all around his car. But I'm more than confident that was the Sasquatch. And so that, that's the closest I've ever been to one. And that actually happened on my last big trip out there, where it was multi-nights. I've had a lot of day trips out in my research area, but that was my last multi-night big trip. But there's been, I have found and made videos about all of them. I've never done casting, but I've found countless footprints. I don't even want to put a number on it, and some better than others, some more clear, some pretty vague. And I've found I believe, it's four X structures, and there's a fifth one that's kind of debatable, but some of the X structures are pretty amazing. But the crazy arch tree things is a really weird kind of phenomenon that's out there that I keep finding. And these trees are just, to bend a tree in this way without it breaking or uprooting itself, that in itself is just pretty amazing. And I've had other vocalization experiences too that were kind of almost like a weird, almost paranormal experience. On one where I was coming down, entering a canyon, and I'm just hitting the river, and I'm hearing this sound, this like, ooh, 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 like almost like an ape sound is what I'm hearing. It's like that's what it reminded me of, that I was hearing like an ape or a gorilla. And it was really strange to me, because I don't think of Sasquatch as apes or gorillas at all. If they were an ape or a gorilla, we would have them being monitored. They'd be in a zoo. They would be captured. There's something so far beyond an ape or a gorilla. And it's just super strange that I'm hearing this sound. And it sounds like it's like 10 feet from me. And I have a camera in my hand. I have all this gear, and that's what I'm there for. And I swear, if I would have just pushed through these bushes and just went around this rock, I probably would have been right by one. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like it was right there. And I turn and I go the other direction, and I head off totally opposite direction. And it wasn't until like an hour later, and I'm just thinking about it, and I was like, why would I have done that? Like, what? I was so potentially close to one, and it was really weird. I don't understand why I went the other way. It's almost like something else steered me that direction. I can't explain it. And I've had a rock throwing incident, and that actually happened while filming too. That's on a video I made called Upside Down Trees, More Enigmas of Sasquatch. And I'm down there filming these upside down trees, and I'm talking about them, and a rock goes bouncing across the rocks right next to me. And I mentioned it on the video, and I'm like, something just either threw a rock at me, or a rock broke free from the hillside or something. And I didn't make a big deal about it when I was filming, because I didn't want it to seem like something I staged, because it would have been pretty easy to stage something like that, to throw a rock off to the side and get the sound to get picked up on the camera. And I just felt like if I make a big deal about this, it's just going to seem fake. So I didn't. I just made a mention about it during the video. But on that same trip, I was over 30 yards over on the other side of this little upside down tree valley. And 2 more times that day, little pebbles come out of nowhere and bounce across the rocks. It weren't like violent, like trying to hit me. That's not what I sensed. But it was just very weird, that rocks were coming out of nowhere and bouncing across the rocks around me. And there's been some weird experiences I've had of stuff of mine disappearing out there, which I can't explain. Like I've had 2 different times now. I've had either Powerades or Gatorades just disappear, gone. I never find them. It's kind of a long story, but that's basically the gist of it. And I had a can of bear mace disappear on my bike. It was hooked on my bike, and it wasn't bear mace. It was like cheaper than bear mace, like the kind of mace that like a jogger would have. And when I noticed it was gone on my bike, I went back and retraced everywhere I went on that bike, because it had disappeared within a narrow window. And I said, okay, well, I remember having it when I was there, and I've only gone from there to here. So I went back and forth and couldn't find it. Just completely gone. And on one occasion, it was very weird. One of my Powerades disappeared, and I so vividly remember having the 2 drinks, and it was on my bike in my bike's pack, and I left my bike for hours and hours and hours. And when I came back to my bike, the drink was gone. And I remembered specifically having it in the bike, because I debated bringing both drinks with me. And I said, I'm going to leave one here in the bike pack, and I'm going to take one with me. And when I came back, it was gone. And when I got back to my truck, it was in my truck. And yeah, that little situation, it was just so weird. It had me really like questioning my sanity, because I just remembered so vividly having both of them. And just weird things like that go on out there. Like I've had something whistle at me where I'm working my way through the canyon, and something is paralleling me in the bushes, and it's blowing these whistles at me. I can't see it. I can't make it out, but it's right there in the bushes on the other side of the canyon, and it's following me and whistling at me. And I guess it could have been a bird, but it was just super weird. And then I was in a game reserve, which isn't far from my main research area. And it was late at night, and I was listening to these owls hoot back and forth at each other. And I was trying to figure out where they were. I had a night vision camera going, and I'm listening to these owls, and they just sounded really weird. They didn't sound like real owls. Sounded like people mimicking owls. And as I'm trying to get closer and closer to the owls, something comes up and blasts this whistle right in my ear. And it scared me so bad that it sent me tripping and stumbling backwards, like running back to the truck. And when I looked at the footage of that incident, you see where I kind of stumble backwards and kind of take off kind of in a hurry back to my truck. But there was no whistle in the audio. And it's just so weird, because you can hear like the forest sounds, and you can hear, like the bugs and stuff making their sound, but there was no whistle yet. For me, the whistle was so loud that it sent me stumbling back. It was just really, really weird that the whistle didn't come out in it. Oh, there's probably a lot of stuff that I'm forgetting. It'll probably all come to me. But I have a YouTube channel. It's called Northwest Yeti Quest. That's NWYETI Quest, QUEST. I'm pretty new when it comes to technology. I'm not good at this stuff at all, but I'm getting better. And I have a lot of footage that hasn't been edited, and I think I have 16 game cameras out right now, scattered across this wilderness that I'm doing research in. And every time I go out, it doesn't matter where I go, what I do, I find stuff that just doesn't make sense. I mean, on my last mission, it was a day trip up there, and I got into this patch of forest where, for some reason, 30-something trees all are knocked down in this fashion where it's like a domino of trees. Like 2 or 3 trees fell over and knocked over another one and another one and another one, and it's like just this shot of trees. And it looks like somebody took a bulldozer and drove right through the forest, because these trees are all protected by other trees on each side of them. It's just like this channel of trees that's just completely mowed down, uprooted, knocked over. But there's no tracks. There's no anything to say. If a piece of equipment had done this, it would be evident. But something came through there and just mowed down all these trees. And that was just on my last trip up there to look at game cameras. And it's just every trip, everywhere I go in this particular area, I find evidence of these beings. Even in an area that I spent all day there and I couldn't find sign. All day I was up and down this mountain looking on every road, and I just kind of concluded, okay, they're not in this area. But then on the way out, I turned down this one road, and this road was just inundated with Sasquatch sign. Tree breaks and bends and these big long vine maples that had been like twisted into these almost braids, and just and I made a video all about this this road, because it just kind of blew my mind that here I was in a different area thinking there was no sign of them, and then I turned down this one road and it's just everywhere Sasquatch sign. It's this area, it's almost just mind-blowing and frustrating to me at the same time that I'm not like a trained researcher. I'm not a zoologist or a biologist, and it's so easy for me to go out there and find evidence of these things, and it just shows me that there has to be some element of our government or our science departments that is completely aware that these things are out there. If little old me on my own personal budget, I can go out there and keep finding what I'm finding, it's obvious to me that some form of our government has done the same. And it's frustrating, because it wasn't that long ago that I was convinced these things aren't real. And now I'm just, obsessed, I guess, blown away with it, because they're real. They're very real. And that's kind of the whole point of my channel, is trying to show non-believers that this is real. I don't go after the shadows and the weird faces in the trees and stuff like that. I'm trying to be more kind of a scientific type approach to it, because I want to be able to show non-believers, like, look what I'm finding, look what I'm discovering. This is real. People need to really open their eyes to this. And I've found so much evidence to support my initial experience, my initial video. And it's just I'm gonna find more. I know I am. I actually have another piece of footage of what I believe is a Sasquatch's head, which was caught on accident. And I'm going to make a video all about this. I haven't made it yet, but I was using a spotting scope attached to a digital camera, and I was filming some stuff about a mile and a half away. And I couldn't see the screen because there was so much glare on the screen because the sun was shining right on the screen. And I was just playing with this equipment, trying it out. And it was like months later that I looked at the footage, and it's just shocking. It looks like a reddish brown Sasquatch's head sticking up from behind a stump where it was sitting there leaning against the stump with only its head sticking up above the stump. And that picture was so shocking to me because around that same time period, I was in a canyon, and I had been making a video, and I've been commenting in this video that I kept seeing this reddish brown color flashing through the trees way up atop the canyon. And I wasn't ever looking for reddish brown because the Sasquatch I saw was dark brown, almost black. So this reddish brown color, I didn't know what it was. And I just kept trying to catch it in my camera because I'd see flashes of it through the trees because it was a good distance away. And then when I saw that footage of that accidental head of a Sasquatch, and there it was, this bright reddish brown color, it just floored me because now I actually think there's at least two different colors of them in the area that I'm researching, because I know they have the dark blackish brown one because that's the first one I saw. But now I'm constantly looking for both colors, dark black and red, like fire brown. And all this will be eventually be on my channel. I think I have about 30 videos on my channel right now, but I have a lot of SD cards and a lot of footage that needs to get edited. And then I have the game cameras going constantly. So it's an ongoing quest, an ongoing investigation, but I'm pretty optimistic that it's going to yield something. I mean, my first year of doing this, I have found so much stuff that I can't even believe it, where some researchers, they're at this for decades, and don't come up with really much of anything. So I've been quite lucky in my first year, I guess. And it's something that I'm pretty obsessed with, passionate about. I'm going to keep doing it, going to keep researching. I feel like it's something I have to do. I mean, when all this started happening, I had to ask myself, why was this deer dropped in my path, and, why did I see the Sasquatch? And, and I just have to assume it was for a reason. And I guess that reason is to collect evidence and try to show people that these are real, that these things really are out there. And yeah, I think that's about the gist of it. But anybody interested in my research at all, please check out my channel. This channel is brand new. I've been up for a month or two. I can use subscribers. I need subscribers. So check it out, Northwest Yeti Quest. And yeah, I think that about sums it up.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah, the sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. Let's pick a memory many been through it. Getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking A bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Somebody going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Somebody going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Somebody going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm, fried chicken, porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound.